These textiles represent our shared heritage and a future woven in unity.
Welcome to Tales by Ajike, where the art of African speaks.
In the dusty lanes of Okai, Ade and Kunle were inseparable. They were shadows of one another, racing barefoot through sudden rainstorms, drumming on overturned buckets, and stealing ripe mangoes beneath the heavy branches of the old trees that lined the village paths. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the air smelled of dust and fruit, they sat beneath the largest mango tree and made a promise. No matter where the world carried them, no matter how far they traveled, they would always return to their roots. But life has a quiet way of breaking promises. After the sudden death of Ade's father, who fell gravely ill before his demise, Kunle's family decided to seek a new life in the city. Kunle came to Ade's house, his eyes red from weeping. He told Ade about their relocation to the city. They both cried together and promised to always remember the bond and memories they shared. They walked together to the edge of the village, hugged themselves once again before Kunle went to join his family. Ade stood by the road and watched his friend disappear, believing it was only a temporary goodbye. 15 long seasons passed without no word. During those years, the void Kunle left was slowly filled by Tund, the sturdy son of the village blacksmith. While Kunle had been Ade's partner in mischief, Tund became Ade's partner in labor. The land knows who belongs to it. Tund would often say as they worked, "You cannot plant lies in Okai and expect peace to grow." Tund became like a brother to Ade, knowing his every struggle and his dream to one day give his daughter a proper education. Together, they toiled in the fields and prepared for the annual Founders' Day festival. The festival was the heartbeat of Okai. It celebrated the day the great ancestor, Alamu, led their people away from a devastating drought to find the hidden spring that fed the village. It was a day of rebirth, headlined by the Parade of Colors, where every family wore their finest attire to show that the gray days of poverty were over. Every year, the festival reunited sons and daughters of Okai, scattered across cities and distant towns. Drums spoke to the soil, masquerades danced. Stories of the past are retold by the elders. 15 years later, during the preparation for the annual festival, fate began to stir. A roar of an engine announced a return. A sleek car kicked up a wall of red dust, and out stepped a man draped in a midnight blue agbada with silver embroidery that caught the sun like diamonds. Kunle felt the atmosphere of his hometown after so many years. He didn't wear the western suits of the city. Instead, he performed a grand homecoming. News began to fly across the village about his arrival. Ade got to know that his brother was finally back after 15 long years. The next morning at the village square, Ade finally reunited with his childhood friend. He and the villagers welcomed Kunle in ground style, rolling, people dancing in excitement. Amid the celebration, Kunle mesmerized the elders with tales of his textile empire in the capital. "I want this year Founders' Day to be more colorful and classy, and would love to handle the outfit for the wonderful people of our Okai community." To prove his success, he produced samples of royal-grade fabrics, velvets that felt like moss and silks that shimmered with the iridescence of a peacock's feather. "Our festival deserves the prestige of the world," Kunle announced, his voice smooth as oil. "I will bring the city's vibrant vibes to Okai. We will make this year's Parade of Colors the envy of the entire region." The villagers were starstruck. They saw a man who had made it, a man who would bring glory to their humble home.
These textiles represent our shared heritage and a future woven in unity.
2 days later, Kunle visited Ade in the quiet of his humble home. He didn't act like a big man there. He sat on a low wooden stool, just as they had done as boys. "Ade," Kunle whispered, his voice thick with fake emotion. "I want to lift my brother up. My textile business is booming, and I want you as my partner. If you invest with me now, I will secure the contract for the festival's fabrics. I'll provide the premium outfits for your family, and we will rise together." Ade saw only the boy he had loved like a brother. Without a second thought, he reached under his bed and pulled out a heavy box. It contained his entire life savings, money meant for his daughter's schooling and the farm's future. He handed it all to Kunle. "I trust you," Ade said softly. "Take part of the money, for my family and Tund's family outfit, for the festival, and use the remaining money for the investment." Kunle smiled. You won't regret this, my brother. Later that night, Tund visited Ajike. When Ajike excitedly told him about the partnership and the fabrics Kunle was ordering for them, Tund's face hardened. Ajike, listen to me, Tund warned. I saw him at the square. He respects the shine of the cloth, but he didn't even look at the hands of our women who spin the cotton. He claims to be a giant, but a giant does not need a farmer's life savings to pay for a shipment. He is selling us a dream, because his reality is likely a nightmare. Be careful. A bright cloth can hide a very dark stain. You are just being protective. Tund, Ajike laughed. He is my brother. As the festival approached, the excitement turned to dread. The royal textiles never arrived. On the same day, Kunle promised that everyone will be receiving their textiles. At the village square, Kunle stood before the elders, looking broken. I trusted Ajike, Kunle lied, his voice trembling. I gave him the funds to pay the transporters, wanting to help my old friend. But it seems the temptation of the city's wealth was too much for a poor man. He told me the money was lost, but we all know better. The village, robbed of their colorful festival and their money, turned on Ajike. Respect became suspicion in a single afternoon. Tund tried defending him, saying, Kunle is the real thief here, that he is aware of the money Ajike gave to Kunle to invest in his textile business. How is it possible for him to steal his own money and that of his people? The villagers didn't believe Tund, because he had no proof to show he is telling the truth. The high chief's face turned to stone. Before the truth could breathe, a preliminary judgment of shame was passed. Ajike, you have betrayed our trust, therefore. You will be punished for this act of selfishness. Your farmland will be seized, and your remaining livestock will also be seized to repay the community. Neighbors will be forbidden from trading with you. As the judgment was being passed, the loudest sound wasn't the elders' voices. It was the silence of Bissy, Ajike's daughter. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her hand clutching the strap of her worn school bag. For years, she had watched. She had watched neighbors who had shared meals with them, now whispering and pulling their children away from her. Baba, she whispered, her voice trembling. Ajike couldn't look at her. His shoulders, usually as sturdy as an Iroko tree, were slumped. The shame wasn't from the lie, but from the realization that he had handed her future to a ghost of a friend. Bissy didn't cry out or throw stones. Instead, she walked to her father and took his hand. Her small palm felt the tremors in his. They are looking at the cloths. Baba, she said loud enough for those nearby to hear, her eyes burning with a mix of sorrow and fierce loyalty. But they have forgotten how to look at the man. You didn't lose the money. You gave it to a brother. If the village wants to be blind, let them. I still see you. Ajike was speechless. He did not shout. He stood in shock. He searched Kunle's face for the boy beneath the tree, but found only a predator. That night, Ajike's grief was silent. He wept in the shadows, mourning a friendship that had cost him his self-respect. Days later, the consequences of Kunle's treachery surfaced. Greed is a loud master. Kunle had stiffed the very thugs he'd hired to stage the shipment robbery. Behind the village square, the secret began to unravel as a heated argument spiraled out of control. Tund, who had been watching Kunle's every move, was hidden in the shadows with the high chief's son. Far from them, behind the thick trunk of an old Iroko tree, Tund crouched low, his breath measured, careful. Beside him stood the high chief's son, half hidden by tall grass. From where they hid, they could see the rich green fabric of Kunle's robe. The way his gold chain caught the sun as he gestured angrily. He watched the others argue back, their faces tight with frustration. Tund raised a warning finger to his lips. Stay still. You promised us a share of the villagers' money and the farmers' money. A thug hissed and threatened to expose him if he doesn't fulfill his own part of the deal. They heard everything, the fake textile business, the samples bought from a city scrap heap, and the plan to flee after the festival. What they heard that afternoon would not leave them. It would change more than one life in the village. They both went straight to the high chief's house to tell him everything. The next morning, the wooden gong summoned the village. Kunle stood near the elders, playing the victim, until a harsh clanging cut through the air. Tund marched in, with the thugs, and they were made to confess. Kunle carried a secret behind his confident smile, one the city had carved into him slowly. In the city, Kunle had chased quick success. He invested in risky deals, trusted the wrong allies, and borrowed to maintain an image he could no longer afford. Each failure pushed him deeper into debt. Yet pride would not allow him to retreat. The city rewarded appearance over truth, and Kunle learned to look successful even while sinking. When creditors began to knock and patience ran thin, Kunle remembered Okai, the village where trust still lived. He decided to use the opportunity of the upcoming festival to gather funds from the people and his childhood friend Ade. Kunle was brought forward in disgrace. The elders turned to Ade with bowed heads. "We saw the city's glitter," the chief said, "but we forgot the value of the earth. Forgive us." The high chief stood, his staff thumping the earth. "Kunle," the chief began, "you tried to bury a man's dignity to cover your own nakedness. Here is the judgment of Okai. You shall return Ade's savings twofold. You will pay for Bissie's entire education, from secondary school to the university gates. You are disqualified from the parade of colors. While we dance, you will sit by the road and reflect on why the drumbeat no longer calls your name." Ade said softly, his voice trembling, "I have loved a ghost for 15 years. You came back to steal from the only person who still remembered who you actually were, who remembered the bond we share and promises we made." He turned to Tund. "Thank you very much for helping me clear my name and restoring my dignity." The long-awaited day finally arrived, Founders' Day. The royal grade, fabrics Kunle promised never surfaced, but the festival was far from gray. Tund and the village youths had spent the night gathering the finest hand-woven ASO oak from local looms. As the drums began to thrum against the morning air, Ade and Tund walked side by side at the head of the parade. Their families followed, draped in cloth that was simple, sturdy and honest. The colors weren't the city vibes Kunle had boasted about, but in the golden morning sun, the deep indigos and earthy browns of the village glowed with a beauty no imported silk could match. The square erupted in dance and feasting as the parade of colors began, each family showcasing their heritage through their attire. Tradition usually dictated that the elders recount the stories of the ancestors on this day. This year, however, they broke tradition. They spoke of Ade, a man who had opened his heart to a long-lost friend only to be met with deceit. The head elder stood, his voice commanding the silence of the crowd. He declared that Ade's heart was pure and that he deserved restoration for the pain Kunle had caused. The air cleared as the injustices were undone. The neighboring villages pledged to resume trade with him, and his seized livestock and farm were returned, to show their remorse for ever doubting him. Despite the tireless defense of Tund and Ade's daughter, the elders granted him the fertile lands at the river's edge. Then came the greatest honor. The head elder handed Ade a ceremonial staff. "From this day, you shall sit among us," he proclaimed. "Your word has proven to be gold. When we deliberate on the future of this village, it is your voice we wish to hear." Ade felt as though he were walking through a dream. Only days ago, he had been a pariah, unable to speak freely. Now he stood as a titled man. He looked at Tund and whispered, "You were right. The land knows who belongs to it." Years passed, and their paths crossed one final time under the same mango tree where their brotherhood had first been forged. Kunle was now a shadow of his former self, his frame diminished, his eyes hollow, and his hands calloused from the labor he had once tried so hard to escape. The royal grade, prestige, had long since stripped away, leaving behind a man who finally understood the cost of a lie. He could not meet Ade's gaze. Ade, however, did not look at him with the fire of triumph, but with the quiet, settled peace of a man whose roots were deep in the earth. As Ade turned to leave with Bissie, now a young woman with a scholar's grace, a trembling voice cracked the silence. Ade, please stop." Kunle took a jagged, rattling breath. "Ade, I have spent these years trying to repay you twofold as the elders commanded, but no amount of coin can buy back the sleep I've lost. My life has been miserable, chasing shadows and trying to fill a hole that greed dug in my soul. Please, tell me you forgive me. Not for the money, but for the love I trampled." Ade looked at the man, seeing not an enemy, but a prisoner who had finally realized his cell was made of his own choices. "I forgave you the moment I regained my dignity," Ade replied softly. "But while the heart can forgive, the mind does not easily forget the shape of a wound." Kunle looked toward Bissie, his voice thick with shame. "I wanted to give her the world, but I almost took it away instead." "Bissie's future is secure," Ade said, his voice firming with pride. "I have continued to further her education with the same slow, steady sweat that has always sustained us. It didn't come from a city miracle. It came from the soil. Ade stepped closer, placing a steady hand on the trunk of the old tree. Listen to me, Kunle. You must start from somewhere. Stop chasing the quick wealth that vanishes like mist in the morning sun. Hard work pays. It might take its time. It might demand your patience. But consistency is the key that opens the only doors worth walking through. He paused, looking out over the village of Okai. Some people change their souls just to survive. Others survive by refusing to change who they are.
If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Ajike. More stories are waiting.